Dr. Amin Sanaia, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Florida. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about something I really love, servant leadership. There's lots of different leadership approaches, different leadership styles, different leadership models. I'm of the opinion that servant leadership can and probably should be at the core of any sustainable, successful, long-term leader. And so we're going to be exploring key leadership attributes of servant leadership and how we can go about developing those. As we go, excuse me, as we get started today, I just wanted to share Amin's bio with everybody. As someone with extensive experience as an author, professor, servant leader, and professional speaker with the John Maxwell certification, Dr. Amin Sanaia has toned his coaching skills with critical attention to detail, experimenting with various techniques and learning from colleagues he admires. As a result, he has developed a passion for serving others and galvanizing others to grow their skills and adopt an altruistic mindset that puts people above profits. I love that. Thank you for the background. Anything else you would like to share with me or the audience by way of your background or personal context, or anything you'd like to highlight before we dive on into the conversation?
Just one thing that I truly am passionate about being a servant leader, serving people. And what you said at the beginning, the importance of servant leadership, it should be at the core of every leader. Because as leaders, we are only as successful as the people that we serve.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify as well, like certainly there are lots of models, there are lots of styles, and different circumstances call for different approaches to leadership, and different people within your organization might respond better to certain styles than others. And so I'm not advocating, I don't think you're advocating for a one size fits all approach that everyone has to be a servant leader in everything that they do all the time. Sometimes there are other approaches that are appropriate and are necessary. But from my perspective, I think servant leadership is more about the foundational components behind how and why I lead, the foundational motivations, and ultimately that the why I think is really important. And so if I'm in leadership for it to be all about me, to get ahead in my career, to make myself look good, for people to talk about me, etc., if that's my sole goal in leadership, inevitably I'm going to end up exploiting people around me to make myself look better. That's just kind of the way it is. And so I think at the core, if I'm going to be focused on being a servant leader first and foremost, it just means that I'm going to notice and work towards supporting my people in every way that I can. And there's altruism in that, certainly, but there's also self-interest in that, because the reality is, if I recognize the best way for me to look good as a leader is to maximize the potential of those around me, and the best way to do that is by supporting them and being with them and helping them. If I can do that, if I can be there for my people and help them be the best they can be, they're going to have more meaning and purpose in their work. They're going to be better performers. They're going to be better team members. They're going to help the organization perform better. All of that makes me look like a brilliant leader. So, I mean, really, from a human case and from a business case, it makes perfect sense for us to try to adopt a more servant leadership approach, and ultimately invest in our people. I think that's really what we're advocating for today. So we're going to unpack that as we move on. Any other comments you wanted to make before we dive on in?
No, I mean, I think the clarification that you made was right on point, because it's not just about serving leader. Obviously, there's other leadership styles, and depending on certain situations, you have to use more of an authoritarian style, especially if you're having some change and change going on. But yes, at the core, servant leader allows you to have some great values that successful leaders have, and we will discuss that as our time goes along today.
Yeah, great. Well, why don't we start by diving in? I know you have something you call the CRAVE approach, CRAVE. Let's unpack that and talk more about that.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things in having led successful teams for a very long time, I've looked at really doing my research of what makes a successful leader and what attributes you see in successful leaders. And my research led me to certain attributes, and that's what I call my CRAVE method, which stands for communication, respect, authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy. If we start off with communication, when I refer to communication, is communication has to be based on trust as a leader. That is truly the first and really important step that we take when we take on the role of a leader. Your people have to trust you, and the easiest way to do that is by communicating effectively. Not only telling people, okay, these are goals, but also telling them the why and the how, and having them be part of that, and having them have a voice in the how, so that they truly get a buy-in. So communication is so vital as a leader. So I started with that, making sure that
Yeah.
when we speak to our teams, communication is at the core, that we are communicating effectively.
Yeah. And if I can just comment on the communication piece, I think everyone listening knows how important communication is within organizations, and successful leaders are going to be great communicators. I don't think anyone has much question about that. But it's interesting, as we approach our leadership approaches, and I think about different styles, I think there's something fundamentally different about someone who has a servant leadership mindset and how they view communication. Communication not just as a strategy, not just as a tool, a tactic, not a lever to pull, but it's communication for the sake of doing the right thing for your people. And people need to know what's going on. People want transparency. They want authenticity. They want they don't expect perfection, but they do expect to understand the why, like you said, and to understand what's going on, at least to a basic level. And I've seen leaders who I think were well-intentioned, but they purposely would guard information. They would purposely try to hold it back. And part of it was just their strategy. They just figured, in order for me to maintain control, I need to control the information. And so they were very stingy with communication. And I don't think it was anything nefarious. I don't think they, thought that they were going to try to keep everyone in the dark or anything. But I think many leaders just simply think that is the better way. And I just have to challenge that. I think there's so much research, and you just mentioned a few key points around the benefits of having more open communication. And if we can't do it, I think our teams are going to be less effective. People are going to be less committed and less bought into what we're trying to accomplish, especially during times of difficulty, times of change. But also, I think it's just the right thing to do for people if you take a servant leadership mindset where you focus on the needs of your people. People need to know what's going on, especially when things are challenging. People deserve to know what's going on when things are challenging. And if I take that approach in communicating with my people, I think a lot of the other challenges we have around communication can often take care of themselves. But I think we often kind of shoot ourselves in the foot as leaders because we try to too tightly control the information that we're sharing, what we're choosing to communicate versus choosing to hold back. And it ends up causing a lot of unintended consequences and problems that didn't need to be there in the first place.
Sure. And just to add on to that, just a bit before we move on to respect, communication really truly allows you to create an atmosphere where you're building your team, and allows you to understand people. When you're able to understand people, that's when everybody wins.
Yeah,
So one
yeah,
of the things for me that's important is when I go into a situation that I'm going to lead a team, the first thing I want to do is making sure that everyone we're able to team build through first understanding ourselves,
Mhm.
If you can't understand yourself, it's going to be really hard to understand others, which is the second part. Understand yourself, then you understand others, and finally valuing the differences of each other, because we are humans, we're unique
Yeah.
unto ourselves. And that communication is what allows that to be able to make a dynamic team.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. All right. The R, respect. Tell us more about that.
So when I reference respect, respect for me is important. Growing up, for me, I saw that a lot, and it was really modeled by my parents, especially my father. Um, but when we talk about respect, is valuing that diversity. So, respecting each other. How do we respect each other? Because when we are able to understand others, their backgrounds, their upbringings, then we value that difference. Each one of us has a path. We all have a story. We started, we're born somewhere, and then, life happens at different steps, some good, some bad. But all that is what we bring to the table when we go to the workplace, and valuing that diversity of thought, because we're bringing all of our experiences to the table. That is where respect is big. So people nowadays don't want to be put in a box, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you don't want to be labeled, oh, those are those people from that part of the world, or these are these people that, they like, sitcoms, or these are these people that play sports. People don't want to be put in a box. We all have different things that we value that are important to us, and our upbringings are what affect that, and really, guide us to what we like and what we don't like. And if we're able to value that diversity of thought, and really allow it to be in inclusive place, we all win, because people feel safe, like, okay, I can be myself now. I don't have to put on this facade. Because you can put on a facade for a little bit of time, but you are who you are. And you're not one person at work and then another person at home. You are who you are.
Yeah, and it's exhausting to put on a facade. People do it all the time. People wear the masks. But if you can free people up to just be their true, authentic self at work, so at least your workplace is a safe place where people can do that, it frees up so much mental and emotional energy for them to not only be, you know, in a better place for them
Mhm.
personally, but it's going to help them just do better stuff, like help them be a better coworker, help them be more creative, because they're not wasting time and energy trying to pretend to be something they're not, or to try to, put on a show and be, performative behaviors for, others around them because they think that's what's required. So just freeing that up, I think, is really, really important. And I think, the diversity aspects that you mentioned, I think, are really key. And just remember that really intelligent, smart, capable, well-meaning people can and will disagree on just about everything, right? And
Without a
so
doubt, without a doubt.
so often we demonize other people who have different perspectives than us. And I have to admit, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. Like I believe certain things. I have things I feel strongly about, and I think I'm right. I wouldn't feel strongly about it if I didn't think I was right. So the question, though, is, if I think I'm right, okay, I mean, that's part of just the deal of life. But am I able to interact with other people around me in a respectful way where I can recognize that, I think I'm an intelligent guy, but so are they. They're an intelligent person. They're well-meaning. They don't have nefarious purposes. They're doing what they think is best usually. And if I can come to conversations with people from that starting point, it doesn't mean I have to agree with everything they say. I may passionately disagree with things that they say, but I'm not attributing things to them, their character, but rather I'm thinking about the issues, and how to work towards them. And if I can stay intellectually humble enough to actually recognize a good point when someone else makes it, even though it contradicts, maybe my framing or what I think at this moment. If I can be intellectually honest enough and humble enough to continue to learn and take in new information, I can adjust my perspective over time. And I think that's what diverse teams and groups bring when you have psychological safety, when you have mutual accountability and trust and built-in respect, because then you can have really robust conversations, talk about things, and explore ideas in ways that you never would if you're just in your echo chamber of everyone just thinking the exact same way as you, or talking and sharing the exact same way as you. I can refine my thinking. I can refine my approach, and ultimately I'm probably going to come up with better solutions. I'm going to come up with better things and stuff and products and services and to be able to address the needs in the market and to address the needs in my team. So that respect piece is just so important.
Yes, and let me just add one thing to what you said. And I'm glad you said certain things that you brought up. So when you find yourself in a conversation with someone that thinks different than you or has a different opinion, what's it going to cost you just to listen?
Yeah.
Is it going to cost you anything? Really, it's not. You have your beliefs. People, just as you have very strong beliefs, other people have very strong beliefs. But if you listen to them and maybe listen to their reasoning, maybe you learn something. Who knows? So it's just having that open mind of, you can listen, but you don't have to allow everything that you listen to or believe everything you listen to blindly. But there's nothing wrong with listening to others' points of view. You can learn something.
Yeah. And to that point, some people, I do think overall we're so polarized. We have such a hard time just having civil dialogue with each other when people disagree. And
Yes.
so we need to work on that as a society within the workplace, certainly. And there's this misconception that I see among some people that they think if I disagree with you, or, so we're having this conversation, you and I, Amin, are having this conversation. You say something, I disagree with you when you say it. Sometimes people will take that and say, well, see, you're not respecting me. You're not respecting my point of view. You're not open. That's silly. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about respecting the person's right to have a difference of opinion, to be gracious, to be compassionate, to be, to give the best faith interpretation to what they're saying. Like, that's what we're talking about. That's showing respect. We can have respectful dialogue back and forth. And I never have to agree with you. That's not part of the deal of respect. Respect just means I have to be willing to listen. I have to be willing to honor your intentions and give you the benefit of the doubt and those sorts of things. But I don't have to believe what you say, or I don't have to buy into what you say. I can continue to hold my beliefs and my strong opinions after we have a conversation. But if I'm truly listening to you with the intention to understand where you're coming from, chances are I will, at minimum, grow to develop some appreciation for your perspective, develop some empathy for your approach and your perspective, and perhaps I'll even find new information that will help me adjust my perspective in a healthy way.
Yes, but without a doubt, I mean, what you said, it's very powerful, and maybe we need to start taking debate classes at school. But we'll move on. So we're authenticity. This is one that for me growing up was really important because I was born in another country, so I wasn't born here, and I came to this country. While I came at a very early age, I had to learn a new language. It was a culture shock, and while I'm better at it now, I do have an accent. So that accent is part of my authenticity of who I am. So really being able to allow people to be who they are, it's important. You get the most out of people when they feel comfortable, when they're able to bring their whole self to work.
Yeah.
Without that, you're not going to get the best out of your people, out of your teams. So it's okay as leaders that we allow people to be themselves. We don't need to tell them, no, you have to be this person, this persona. No, not really. you're not getting the best out of someone when you do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've already talked about this in relation to the first two elements a little bit. But again, to just repeat, if I'm a servant leader, part of the assumption there is that I'm someone who's willing to meet people where they're at. So people on my team, I see you, I'm with you, I see you where you're at. You don't have to put on, airs or have performative behaviors. Be who you are. Now, I might coach you, I might mentor you, I might try to help you develop into the person I think you can become. And in some ways, that requires growth, that requires change. Everyone can improve, everyone can grow. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be petty about things that don't matter. And I think so many people, view it that way. Like, I don't need to comment on your clothing. I don't need to comment on your hairstyle. I don't need to comment on your makeup. I don't need to comment on like a lot of things. Um, Probably most things are
Mm-hmm.
just fine the way they are. But when it comes to particular leadership skills and competencies and capabilities or specific specialized skill within the job, those are the things I can help you with. Those are the things I'm going to try to develop with you. And people can have different styles, different approaches. And not everyone can or should try to be just like me. If I have a whole team of me, then I have a team that's not going to be very successful. So I really should have a team where everyone feels comfortable to just be who they are and come and show up that way at work.
Absolutely. When we talk about vulnerability, so let's go there. Being vulnerable is not easy as a leader. So you'll see some leaders that are much against it. Their style is more authoritarian, and they're like, no, I cannot be vulnerable. That's a sign of weakness. Well, it's not. Nowadays, people want to be able to relate to their leaders. So the leader cannot be so far ahead where people cannot relate to them. So what can you do? Be vulnerable. Me as a leader, if I'm in a when I'm in leadership positions, guess what? First thing I do is make fun of myself.
Hmm.
That puts everyone at ease. It lets them know, hey, it's okay. I'm human. Or I make a mistake. The first one, I raise my
Yeah.
hand. Hey, I made a mistake. It's good. It's human. We're not going to let you go because you made one mistake. I mean, obviously, if it's something
Yeah.
that is illegal, immoral, something like that's different. But making a mistake, that's how you learn. Who doesn't make a mistake? I make mistakes every day. It's how you learn from those mistakes. So being vulnerable, it's really, I mean, something that every leader should look at and be okay with it. So let me ask you a question, John. You remember that movie Patch Adams?
Yeah.
Famous movie. So there's multiple scenes on there that are very powerful, but the scene at the end when he's having to go in front of the board and give his reasonings of why he's running this unlicensed clinic, and he brings up the point of indifference. That is so powerful, and that is something that as leaders we don't want to be seen as indifferent. As a leader, you want to be vulnerable and be seen as human, where people can relate to you. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. And it really goes hand in hand. Modeling appropriate vulnerability is really important within your teams. You just said a little bit of honest self-deprecation, acknowledging when you make a mistake. It frees up everyone else to recognize and be a little bit more comfortable in their own skin and to realize, perfection is not the standard here. What I'm expected to do is learn and grow. And that means that there will be times that I try things that don't work as well as I had hoped. And if as a leader, what I would get upset at is someone who, just can't learn and repeats the same mistake over and over again, and someone who simply seems to just be fine, kind of stuck where they're at. That's something I'm not okay with. but I'm totally fine with people trying things in a measured way, iterating, experimenting, and ultimately, things work, some things don't work. You learn, you grow, you try something else, and you develop over time. That's what I want. That's what a good leader should be promoting, that kind of a culture and a style. And unless you have appropriate vulnerability that you model as a leader, you're not going to get it from most of your team. Some will, because some, that's just the way they are and they're unapologetic about who they are. But a lot of people will not feel safe to do that. And so you're going to end up with people just being super cautious, not willing to try, not putting themselves out there. And that just means you're not going to get as cool stuff.
Yeah, you won't get 100% of that of those people, and
Yeah.
again, then you're not really bringing that team to be this dynamic, successful team when they're not just they cannot be themselves, and they have to be very cautious.
Yeah.
Now we go into empathy. So empathy for me, I have a healthcare background, so that is something that as working in healthcare, it really should be something that be part of a prerequisite. But more so is that with empathy, when I talk about empathy, I'm talking about being assertive with empathy. And what does
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
mean? It's like, whoa, what are you talking about? How can you be assertive with empathy? It's as a leader that it's okay to create a culture where people can disagree without making it personal. And that's important in a team dynamic. And if you truly want a team that is going to be able to be themselves and say their piece, you have to allow that, where we can have a conversation, but we don't have to make it personal. And you can allow your teams to disagree with you as the leader, and you're not going to take it personal. So
Yeah.
as a leader, we part of that as well is we have to be able to walk in our employees' shoes. We have to take that into consideration. For example, nowadays we have tons of people that are single parents. Being a single parent is tough, man. That is real. So if you're a single parent, when you have those days that your kids don't feel well, or they are just not willing to cooperate in the morning, that's tough for them. Usually they end up being late to work in those days. You have to have that empathy of like, okay, yeah, while you need to be at work on time, what happened? Talk to me. Is there something going on? And if you're able to work through that, man, you're gonna have a really rock star employee for the most part, that is gonna go above and beyond every single time when you're able to have that empathy that, oh wow, you understand the situation. And that is real nowadays. I mean, we
Yeah.
let's take let's take the time to get to know our people and be empathetic to their situations.
Yeah. And that's just one example of having empathy, showing empathy to your people. There are so many we could explore. Absolutely. I mean, this has just been a really great conversation. I really appreciate you walking us through the CRAVE approach to servant leadership, and how that's going to be powerful for us as we're attracting and retaining wonderful members of our team. It's just going to lead to a much more compassionate workplace. It's going to create a much more inclusive culture of belonging within your workplace. And that's going to result in a whole bunch of better, outcomes for you as the leader, for your team, and for the organization as a whole. Before we wrap things up for today, I just want to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. So people can connect with me on my website as draminsanaia.com. That's Dr, my full name, aminsanaia.com. All my information is on there. There's also a link on there if you want to book a call. We can have a discussion about anything that surrounds leadership. that's the best way to contact me. Now, final word, I want to say, as leaders, not only do we have to walk the talk, but being able to do that, one of the things that I teach a lot when I'm speaking to anyone that's a young leader or someone that's struggling with in trying to grow their leadership skills is having a positive mindset.
Mm.
Coming from a place where you're not looking at the negative, but you're looking at the positive, being able to be constructive when you go into situations and when you're working with your teams. If you don't take anything from this conversation other than this, just be positive. Have a positive mindset that's going to allow you to really be relatable to people. You're going to be able to lead people the right way and have their best interests.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this has been a really fun conversation. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Amin can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have